Okay, welcome to the Women in Investment Management Financial Advice Masterclass. My name is Orisa Komi, and just quickly going to go through the webinar logistics before we get started. So if you have been to previous masterclasses, you know pretty much the functions in itself. So main thing is for you to, during the Q&A session, you will please use the Q&A tab to ask any questions. You can actually use this throughout the session. This just makes it easy for us to manage track questions effectively. So please use that to ask any questions. If you also want to get our attention during the session, please use the raise hand function and to get our attention. And then again, if you want to make just general comments, respond to any general chats, please use the chat function to do that. And again, feel free to take notes during the session. So quick run through of our speakers. So we have Katarina Rudiger who's the CEO of the brokerage, Liz Field, CEO of PINFAR, and Sarah Saw, CEO of Hawksmoor, and Tracy Davidson, CEO of Heartwood Group. As well as our CEOs, we also have our other speakers, Sandra, who you'll be hearing from later on, apologies if I think I pronounced that incorrectly, who's a client senior manager at Brown Shipley, based in Edinburgh, and she's responsible for an experience in management of clients' investments, as well as providing broader wealth management advice. To go from Sandra and the rest of us later on, and also Lisa, who's the head of HR business partnering and operations at Brooks Macdonald, as well as Gemma Farley, who's graduated in psychology from Cardiff University, and she started her career agency side within a digital marketing agency. Again, you hear from her and her journey shortly. And Portia Wakefield, who is a business analysis practice manager at Close Brothers. And finally, Rebecca Pinkin, who is also originally from Australia and studied international business and economics at the University of Queensland. So that's a list of our speakers. And now I'm going to hand over to Katarina Rudiger, the CEO of the brokerage, to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Oris, and just wanted to really say a warm welcome from me as well. As Oris said, we're really thrilled to have you all here, and this has been our most popular event so far, if not ever. So yeah, so really well done to Oris and the team for making this such an exciting event. And I'll say a few words about the brokerage, but before I do so, I just wanted to really thank the woman who's made it all happen, and that's Liz Field. And Liz and I, we met last year following a recommendation of one of my board members, and he literally just said, you have to meet Liz, she's, making things happen. And, of course I went to see her, and when I met her, I sort of really knew why, and I sort of thought, we have to do something together. And when Liz came with a suggestion around, an event around getting more women into the industry, to be honest with you, I was a bit dubious at the beginning, because obviously as a charity, we generally tend to not just focus on women or on girls, we focus on, young people from disadvantaged backgrounds in general. So, that's something that we hadn't done before, but, I have to say, this speaks for itself. And Liz, you might have changed our mind, we might be doing more targeted things going forward. So yeah, thank you so much for, being the driving force behind this, Liz. And thank you so much to all of our volunteers as well. I don't think you should underestimate the role you play, really, by giving young people the insights into your professions, into your working lives. It can be life-changing for our candidates to really understand, what their options and opportunities are there. So, thank you so much for your time. And obviously, well done to all our candidates. So hopefully most of the 132 who registered have actually showed up. So, that's fantastic. And, I think it's just such a great opportunity. And just very briefly, as a charity, our vision is to create a world where ability and aspiration are the only determinants of career paths. And we've been for 24 years running programs, doing things like this, raising awareness of sectors and professions that are typically not very accessible for our young people. But we have some new direction and new strategic priorities where we also work more closely with corporates, because, you know, if we really want to create that world, it can't be just about the young people. It has to be also about corporate and organizational behavior, and we have to support our partners in their journey to becoming more diverse and inclusive, and that's what we are focusing on going forward. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you a bit more on that. And yeah, I'm really hoping that today is kind of the starting point for all of us on that journey together. And yeah, thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you, Katerina. And going to now hand over to Liz Field.
Super, thank you. And thank you very much, Katerina. Yeah, it was a year ago, wasn't it? It's a lot has happened in that period of time. Hi, everybody. Sorry that we meet in person. When we had originally conceived this idea, of course, it was all going to be face to face, but the beauty of virtual is that we can see and reach more of you. And this is also being filmed. And will also be available for those who haven't been able to dial in today. They can have a look at it later, and you can have a look at it later as well. So the power of technology and digital, you know, we have to be thankful for some things that have been accelerated this year. So as Katerina says, as I'm CEO of PIMFA, and PIMFA is a trade association, and not many people know what a trade association, let alone what the personal investment management and financial advice sector is. You're going to hear far more about the latter from my colleague call today. A trade association, effectively, you know, we stick up for our firms. We represent the views of our firms to regulators. We try and identify good practice and disseminate that, develop thought leadership, and part of what we're doing today is about promoting good practice and promoting the sector more broadly. Now, I'm not your typical candidate for this sector or indeed for financial services. I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I didn't go to university. I just wanted to get on and earn money. And I had a great manager who said, actually, I think you might need to think about doing more than just the A levels that you've got. So in my own time, I did get my degree. I did it through the Open University. And I also studied part-time in the evenings, getting a master's degree at Birkbeck in psychology. So I got there, but in my own way. And I've been a personal advocate. You know, I've got for diversity and inclusion, probably because of that. So I developed apprenticeships that ever were, some many moons ago now, in insurance. So diverse routes into the profession. I've overseen board competency projects, which was about building diverse and inclusive boards. I've developed women's networks. I'm a judge on several diversity and inclusion awards in the financial services sector. Ambassador for Ensuring Women's Futures, which is all about identifying the perils and pitfalls to women and their families on their income in retirement, also known as pensions. And I'm an LGBT great ally. And this latest initiative is part of the work that we've been doing on diversity and inclusion to really promote our sector to girls and to accelerate change. We've been doing a lot in our industry. We need to do more. And we also need to raise the perception and awareness, challenge the perception even of our sector. There is no on Wall Street film that explains what our industry is all about. And our is all about people, totally about people. So we've got some fabulous field models you're going to hear from a little bit later. But firstly, a discussion with two equally fabulous CEOs who I have got the privilege to know and to work with, because they both they both look at my annual appraisal on a regular. They are on my board, and what we're going to do is we're going to have going to hear about the two of them and their journey, but also then have a conversation, the three of us, about why this is important and why it matters. So I think, Sarah, you're off mute. So I wondered, do you want to kick us off, please? So Sarah Saw from Hawksmoor.
Liz, thank you very much indeed. I suppose like a lot of women in the financial services industry of my generation anyway, got into the situation completely by accident. My degree was in marine biology and zoology, having initially wanted to be a doctor, but I failed my physics A levels, so that was my course to success. And I literally met a bloke in a pub when I was in London, who told me that there was a job going at the firm that he worked for, and he used words like stockbroker and city and dealer, and I hadn't got a clue what he was talking about, but I was a bit desperate for some money. And this was in October 1984, and I went along for an interview at this firm and got the job. They put me on 3 months probation, and I thought, great, that'll give me enough money to buy Christmas presents, and I'll go and get a proper job in January. The rest, as they say, is history, and that was 36 years ago. So what has taken place since then has just been something that I could have only ever dreamt of. I worked for Brewin Dolphin for 29 years, then moved to JM Finn, and then moved to Hawksmoor a year ago as CEO. And it's been a fantastic journey. But the most important thing is that this industry is one in which women can work so collaboratively and so cohesively. We work in teams. The working day is very friendly. You're not sort of doing deals till 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's a great industry for a woman. And I've been an investment manager. I've moved on to the management side, and all through that journey, I have wanted to encourage, and I have seen more and more women entering into the industry, and it is just fantastic to see people like all these lovely faces I can see on the screen today, contributing and making it more and more diverse. And one day we will get to the point where 50% of all our investment managers and asset managements and all our support staff are female, and that will be a huge achievement. We've still got a way to go, but it's all heading in the right direction.
Super, thank you, Sarah. Tracy Davison, who's CEO of Hartwood Group. So over to you.
Yeah, I have many titles, and that's a good one.
That's one of them.
Good afternoon, everybody, and absolute pleasure to see you all and be with you this afternoon. I'm going to follow a theme. I also got into financial services by accident, and similar to Sarah, I had a change in direction. I was always wanted to be a music teacher all the way through school until the last minute. And in sitting my A-levels and getting my place at university, I realised that's not what I wanted to do. So I took a year out, to which my mother replied, well, don't think you're going to swan around at home for a year. You better go and get yourself a job. So off I went, and I was offered, I offered a job with a bank. And a year later came round, and my place at university came up, and by then I was having a ball. I'd found my home. I realised I really really enjoyed finance and how business worked. I loved the interaction with people. I was doing my financial services qualifications, so I was growing still. And of course, I was enjoying earning some money and having some fun. So I fell into it by accident. And maybe that's why we should all be here, because we can't rely on people accidentally falling into this wonderful service that we work in. We need it to be a little bit more of an ambition. But one of the reasons why I developed and carried on in the service is I realized how much I enjoyed dealing with people. And when I became a qualified financial advisor, when it was my job to sit in people's homes and talk to them about their ambitions and their desires for the future, and predominantly that was about what they wanted for their families and their children's education and their security. That's when I really realized the importance of the sector that we work in, and I became even more passionate about it. And it can come home to roost when occasionally a client will phone you to tell you why the advice you gave them worked out so well for them. So I have had, unfortunately, in the past where unfortunate illness or accidents have befallen clients where they've used some of the advice that I've given them and it's worked and it's done what they expected it to do. So that's when I realized, again, this is a fabulous sector. But I have also come across the fact that people relate to me as a woman, or they related to my age or the circumstance. And I think that as we all develop professionally, this is something we must bring more to our business, because it can't always be one size fits all. And anybody who takes advice from somebody is buying that from the person. And it's very much about people and a relationship. So I personally think financial services, especially the financial planning and the investment sector, is not only fascinating place to work and truly rewarding, but every day you see the impact it has on other people's lives. And it can be a small impact or it can be an enormous one, but it's so rewarding. So I'm loving being here to be able to encourage more people like us all to get into this sector.
Thank you, Tracy. And you've picked on some themes that we were talking about when we were discussing today, which is about customers and about culture as well of organisations. I mean, we have made some changes. I mean, as you can gather from the three of us, we've been around a bit in this industry, a little bit longer than our other colleagues who are on the call today. And when we joined this industry, there was a handful of women. I think, you know, but even now, I mean, we have made progress. There are 17% of the client-facing individuals in our industry are, and we, in terms of from a Black and minority ethnic backgrounds, that we don't have any statistics on that, but certainly, you know, as a barometer to our conferences, we don't see many from a Black and minority ethnic background. Now, from a cultural point of view, yeah, we've made some changes, but we need to do more. And part of that is about culture. So what are your observations, Sarah, Tracy, on this kind of change and where we need to get to and why?
Shall I kick off, Sarah?
Yeah, you kick off, go on.
I think was it you, Sarah, that name dropped Wolf on Wall Street, or Liz, one of you did earlier on. Yeah. And I think that our sector is unfortunately suffers that people don't describe financial services as its component parts. They describe it as one big. So you'll often hear people talk about bankers' bonuses or the bad city or investment banks or all the things that are wrong, that have gone wrong, certainly with the last financial crisis around in the noughties, then it gets painted with one brush. But there are so many constituent parts to our sector, and they're all distinct, and they're not all bad, far from it. In fact, it's all about how we run it, really. But I think the culture of our industry gives ourselves a bad name if you look at it from the whole piece. If you break it down, then we can look at each different business, and this is a business in our particular area that can work particularly well. But one of the necessary components to a really helpful and growth developing culture is a diversity of the members of that business. So the more diverse your workforce, the better the culture is, or certainly the better the chance of having a progressive culture.
Yes,
And there's also with
go on, Liz.
Sarah. Yes, no, carry on.
No, I was going to say that in addition to that, there are two factors here, and one of them is the fact that half our clients are female, or tend to be, and women do speak in a different language in many respects. So, and a lot of the literature and a lot of the way presentations are put together don't necessarily suit women. So a female investment manager or asset manager does actually approach things in a slightly different way. So I think, you know, what I remember when I used to manage money, and I would phone up a client, a couple, and the wife would answer the phone, and I would say, "Oh, hello, it's Sarah Saw from wherever," and they would say, "Oh, I'll just go and get my husband." And you go, "No, I'm talking about your money." And yet they would automatically default to the male partner. And it's about women who not only have these assets, but also actually understand how they work. And quite often people are put off because of the perception that it's a Wolf of Wall Street type environment and that they'll never understand about investments. But actually they will, because they're not that complicated in the sort of private client investment world. It's if they're explained well, then then they're easy to understand. But so I think that's why we need more women client facing to help women who are client facing, and then to move into the BAME environment is, and as Liz said, we don't even have statistics on that, but you know that is very poorly measured, and again should be encouraged as well. So there's still a lot of work to do here, but we're moving in the right direction. And the other thing is to be seen as a proper career, like being a lawyer or an accountant at school, from school age, from any background, because I know Tracy and Liz do talk at a lot of school events, career events, and it is still quite shocking how schools are very bad. This is for men and women, by the way, of any background. Still don't promote our industry as a good career. You know, you have to take exams for it. You know, it's just as structured as accountancy or law or architecture or anything like that, and yet not put on the radar. And that's why so you've got to go back and tell your schools about what a great industry we're in.
Which I mean, so then you've got the client piece. And just summarising what the two of you just said there, you know, in the context of that you know, women live longer than men. The amount of money that is going to be passed down into what they call the baby boomers, the majority of that is going to go to women who need support and help. And most of the thinking, as Tracy talked about earlier, about you know, when you talk to a woman about what their aspirations are for, you know, for themselves, it's about their families and about of their families. So that whole discussion and transfer of wealth, it's a huge opportunity for our industry, and it's a huge opportunity for individuals. We need to make sure that we've got enough of the right people to be able to give advice to this growing cohort of the individuals that are coming down the line. I've got the American stats, but you're talking trillions of dollars. I don't know what they are in terms of the UK, but the stats are equally. And there's a lot coming down. There's a lot coming down the line, and our role is to provide financial futures and to provide some mental well-being. There's a big piece of work there. And the second thing there is about attracting people to come in our industry, which is part of so, you know, people want to work for good organizations. So yeah, the more diverse and inclusive we are as an industry, the more that we're hoping that we will get diverse and inclusive talent to come and work for us. Anything else to add on that? Because I think the talent piece and the customer thing that we talked about earlier.
I think our whole industry has a huge role to play actually in the whole sustainable and kind planet brief, and we forget and we detach it from it. But when someone like Sarah, when she was investing money on behalf of her clients, makes an investment decision to put it into a particular fund or instrument, you can choose who that is. And those firms that don't follow a good line, who don't follow that, for example, the UN Compact, don't get the votes and don't get the investments from bigger firms. So it's also an interesting facet to somebody who enters this as a career, that not only do you work with people, but you have an opportunity to influence how large corporates around the globe do behave and what they do for their planet. So it's such a multifaceted occupation.
I think the other thing to mention is flexibility. And we talked earlier about the fact that there are more people attending this event as a result of the fact that we're online. But one of the things that has been very challenging, particularly for women, has been flexible working. It can be bringing up a family, it could be caring for, and this applies to men and women, but it does it's caring for an elderly relative or a sick relative or something like that. And the industry hasn't been overly flexible. It's been quite flexible, but not overly flexible. The great thing about COVID is that it has actually really opened the eyes of senior managers who might historically have been reluctant to allow flexible, to actually say somebody working from home really does work properly from home. And I think in terms of flexible working for whatever reason and why you need it, I think it has been fantastically revolutionary. And I think moving forward, however we come out of this, flexible working is here to stay, and it's going to help people's careers significantly in the years to come. And I think, you know, if nothing else good comes out of COVID, that has to be one thing that does.
That is super. Thank you. So I'm conscious of the time. Hopefully that's just giving you a little bit of a flavour of the people-centric organisations that are part of the membership of PIMFA. You know, we've deliberately chosen a whole variety of different types of jobs to talk to you about today, and another 2 sessions over the course into next year, because actually there's a whole host of different types of jobs that you can do within our industry. I'm going to say much more about that. That's why we've got our other 5 here. Tracy, Sarah, thank you very much for your input. Really, really appreciate it. And I think, Oris, you're going to take it from here.
That is correct. Thank you, Liz. Really enjoyed that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, before I introduce the next set of speakers, I forgot to mention that at the end, we're also going to have a virtual networking session. So if you want to stay behind, we'll be doing that for about half an hour or so, just to find out, you know, get to continue the conversation with the speakers and get to find out more about what they do, and sort of, you know, we're trying to bring in the face-to-face networking, post-event networking to a virtual world. So we will share the link at the end for people who would like to join that as well. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Sandra. Just to briefly about yourself and then.
Hello, hi. So I am Sandra Daly Dite from Brown Shipley Quintet. So the first thing is, let's focus on my surname. It is Daly Dite. And my first advice is, unless your surname is Smith, always make sure that people know how to pronounce your surname. And normally before the meeting, And after as well, I would send my clients a quick note and I write phonetically how to pronounce my surname. So on the way back, quite often they said, Sandra, from the meeting, I was going, daily ditte, daily ditte, daily ditte. And the funny thing that all of them know how to call me. However, I quickly add, just please call me Sandra. Think of me as a Brazilian football player. I'm Ronaldo of financial services, or Beyonce, whatever you prefer. So starting from that, my beginning wasn't as glamorous as now. I'm from Lithuania, and this is the flag of my country, but I was born, it was the Soviet Union at the time. And sadly, the Second World War took our all wealth of the family, and we started really from the bottom. So I think my biggest drivers were I was hungry for money and power. So when I was thinking of what career I'm going to choose, that was my biggest decision. And I was looking based on the films around. So that was either I'm going to be a lawyer or a private banker. Quite quickly, I realized that in order to become a lawyer, I had to read so many books, and that was kind of not my thing. I was quite good in maths. So I thought, economics would do for me. So I was thinking, well, bring it on, that Wolf of Wall Street. I'm ready for those, yacht sizes, bonuses, and I'm ready to conquer that world. So I've graduated economics in Lithuania, and then I quickly realized that it's not going to open for me, neither power nor money, and I have to move to Wild West. So I moved to London first of all, and now I am in Scotland, where I graduated Edinburgh University and I did master's degree of economics. I remember when I graduated and when I was applying for jobs, how terrified I was. I was looking at all of these job descriptions, having no idea what I'm applying for. And to be honest, I made so many mistakes. I remember writing to Barclays and saying how much I would like to work at the HSBC. And just these things happen. And I have no idea for the positions that I was applying, what the job entailed. I got one of them. My first job was as a proposition development analyst. I worked there for 2 years. I still can't tell you what I did there. So I realized that I can't pursue that as a career because I find it very confusing, as I wasn't able to explain to anyone else what I was doing. And I thought there must be so much more to the financial services than the job I'm doing. I looked around, picked 5 people, then I thought they were very successful. I sent them a message. I said, look, I would really appreciate some career advice from you, as I think that you're very successful. Could I buy you a coffee and we could have a chat? And you would be surprised how much people are willing to do when you come with a compliment. All of them said yes. And I had 5 follow-up chats where one of them suggested, Sandra, if I were you, I would look up wealth management. And that, I think, the first time when I looked at the term, I've looked up and I did my research and I realized, well, with this wealth management, both of the things, money and power, comes through. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. And I applied for the job and became a client advisor. And this is truly, sometimes I don't even feel that it actually is my job, how much I enjoy having that relationship, as Tracy said, with your clients, sitting at their home at the kitchen table and having a conversation about what is important to them. And believe me, the conversation goes way beyond the money. Wealth has so many more meanings, and having that ability to open that conversation and to understand what's important to them and then help them to achieve the dreams, this is the power that I never was dreaming of. And in the beginning, I always thought that, you came to the office, and as Liz said, it's like 17% are only women, and mainly you're surrounded by white men in their 50s wearing blue suits, and you suddenly think that you have to become just like them. I even tried to really fake like a posh English accent. That wasn't going well at all. However, I know that's going to sound incredibly cheesy, but the moment I had my breakthrough, when I've realized that it's okay to be me, and actually my clients really like me for who I am, and that allows me to have this authentic and those real conversations. And This is why I love not perhaps every client and every day in the office or like working from home, but I'm incredibly grateful that I'm in this job and I'm determined to open the door and invite more women to join me.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Sandra, and for kicking us off as well. Thank you. And I'm going to come to Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. Freaked me there. I thought I was last. So I'm Rebecca. I'm a project manager at Close Brothers. So I really wasn't quite sure what to talk to you all about today, because I never think my job is quite interesting. So I thought I'd start at the start, because as many of the other panelists, I've never really intended to start here. I'm from Australia. I grew up in the outback. It was a very fun life, but it was also a very hard life. After about a decade of drought, my parents decided that they wanted us to at least see some grass in our life. So we moved into town and went through all of the normal schooling. When I was in high school, same age as you are now, I really did not know what I wanted to do with my career. I took some time off after high school. I worked as a manager at McDonald's and lots of other kind of hard grafting jobs. I then decided that I thought it would be a good idea to have a business degree. And so I studied that in economics, just because I really love behavioral economics for some reason. And when I graduated from uni, I was quite lucky to achieve one of the positions at the Virgin Australia's Airlines graduate program. It was something that I really didn't think I had an opportunity to win. But when I spoke with the mentors after I had been accepted, they said that they really liked the determination that I had, in fact, that I'd worked through different jobs, such as marketing coordinators and so forth, throughout my university degree. And I think that really comes down to the work ethic my parents instilled in us, and that it's always good to get your hands dirty and just kind of keep going through, even if you're not exactly where you think you want to be just yet. So I bet you're wondering, how did I go from an airline to being in financial services? And so I did a graduate program because I thought it would give me a lot of exposure to different areas and I might find what I wanted to do. And on the first day I did, I was put into a project and asked to look after opening lounges. And I realized immediately that I loved project management. So I did that for the next 2 years, traveling all around Australia, opening lounges for very exclusive reasons. But I had started to develop some poor skills and some bad habits because I didn't have the right training to be a project manager. So I took a big step back and I went and worked as a project coordinator in a firm and started doing my formal training and worked with some really great people. I did find, though, that I got stuck, which is something that happens quite a lot. When you're working in a junior role, people don't tend to continue promoting you if you've been there for a little while. And so I moved away and I moved to London in the hope of being able to enter the financial services, which I luckily enough was. I thought that this was a good opportunity because finance does have such a wide range and the options of the projects that you get to work on are really different, and there's always something exciting to be done. So you might be wondering, what does a project manager do? Unlike Sandra and Sarah and Tracy, my clients are internal. So I look at making strategic changes within the business, and the project generally has a life cycle. So it's something that's distinct and it's done once. So I really enjoy being able to do lots of different projects. I have fallen into a pattern in my company and I've been responsible for regulatory projects for the last 3 years. So one of the big ones was something called MiFID II, which is quite dull to anyone else, but also GDPR, which you'll probably know a little bit more because you've added a lot of tick boxes to anything that you sign up to, particularly newsletters. So these were quite exciting projects for me. They were very large and tangible, and it was a very big step for me in my career. But it was actually quite challenging to work on within the business. I was still relatively new, and these are not projects that people want to have within their business. It's not something that's fun, not a great new product or something that's going to make people's day-to-day lives better. And so you do come up against a lot of resistance, but it's something that you get more comfortable with over time, and you start learning your subject matter information and you gain a lot more confidence through that. I'm now working on a large team, which Portia is one of my colleagues on. We're working on a much more strategic and more exciting project to bring some new skills and opportunities into our business, and something that will actually add value to our internal clients, in this instance, our operational teams, and make their lives a bit better. I really do love my job. It's a perfect fit for my personality. And I think that that's something that's really important to think about when you are picking out what you want to do with your work. But also remember that your career is going to evolve a lot over time, and you'll probably have multiple careers throughout your life. So you don't ever feel like you have to pick one thing right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. And I'm now going to go to Gemma.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. So I am Gemma. I am the campaign planning manager at Openwork. Openwork is actually a financial advice network who have over 4,000 financial advisors who look to help clients. So I guess I kind of fell into financial services a little bit, which seems to be the theme of many of us, but I'm so glad I did. I started at 16 at school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. At one stage, I wanted to be a physical education teacher. So I started doing my A-levels and took a new subject, psychology, which I absolutely fell in love with, and was fascinated about things that motivate individuals and why they behave in a certain way and the triggers and how that affects human behavior. Which pretty much spans all across life, particularly financial services and decision making. So I decided to go to university and study psychology. I then decided while I was there that I thought I wanted to be a psychologist until I started doing some part-time work in the Student Union Marketing Department to help fund my study. There I started to realise that actually marketing was my calling, and how psychology related so much to marketing and how you think about individuals' needs and their views and their behaviours. So I was lucky enough to get accepted on a graduate programme out of university at a digital marketing agency. So I got to experience lots of different roles within the agency, and they were essentially an online advertising agency for multiple different clients. So we had some in financial services space and some charities and a whole mixture of things. I then took a role there in media planning and buying, which is all about understanding the different types of clients, what their views are, what their behaviors are, how you can engage them on a particular topic or with a particular proposition or product. I then decided that I was looking for a new challenge, and a role came up at Openwork, which I thought was fascinating, and that's where I became a campaign planning manager, Openwork side, and I'm very glad I did. I don't think I will ever move out of the financial services industry now. And I know you're probably thinking, well, she's just saying that because she's talking on here. Absolutely not true. I've realized that the key thing for me is that we help so many people that are often can be in quite difficult situations. And you think, well, how do you do that as a marketeer that sits at head office who doesn't speak to the clients? Well, we will often work with our advisors to help them with client communications. And we will, I guess the really exciting thing for me is that we don't just send nonsense out to clients and just do bulk, oh, everyone will get this communication, off you go, job done. That's not what it's about. It's all about actually understanding the different types of clients, what their needs are, what we need to be communicating to them, what might be relevant, what might be engaging. And then we will often help advisors do that, look to anything off the back of it in terms of generating appointments, and seeing some of the stories that have come out of that is what really inspires me to want to keep going and going to my job every day. So just one example that really hit home was we helped an advisor engage with clients around their pensions that this particular client had taken out many years ago, and had actually forgotten about the policy that they had. They were in a really horrible place at the time. They were looking at being evicted out of their flat. They suddenly were super excited that they had this pension. The financial advisor helped them completely turn their situation around. They managed to access some of the pension. They purchased the flat instead of being evicted from it. They actually managed to buy their own home, and then they looked at how they could plan later in life. I only got to play a very small part in that journey, with helping with the client communication and making sure it was relevant to that client. But it really inspires me that actually just playing a small role at head office to help our advisors, to help clients, and keeping them at the heart of what they do, I think is really important. And I think it relates to the mental health side of things as well, that financial situations can really, I guess, make people feel stressed or anxious if they're not quite right, or they don't understand things. And if we can just play one role of helping them feel more at home, that they know what's going on, that they're confident in what they're doing and can achieve what they want to in later life, then I guess my question would be, why wouldn't you want to? Yeah, I guess the last thing from me, I guess, would be, don't be put off that you think it's an industry where you have to be really good at maths and it's only for men. That's not true. There's so many roles within financial services that don't require you to be amazing at maths. And also, yes, although the equality in gender and the gender gap is not exactly where we want it to be, it's changing. And I genuinely believe that if you work hard and persevere and want to achieve in whatever role you end up doing, then you will succeed. So that's it from me.
Excellent. Thank you, Gemma. I know you're all dying, waiting to start asking questions. We have 2 more speakers to introduce themselves, and then we're going to kick off with the Q&A. So we're going to hand over to Portia next, and then Lisa.
Thanks, Iris. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here and speak with you all today. I'm going to share the story of my career journey. I think you'll hear some similarities with some of the stories that you've already heard. I'm also going to share some of the lessons that I've learned or I'm still learning along the way. And I can't promise it's going to be the most thrilling story you'll ever hear, but I do hope that each of you take something useful away from it. Now, for those of you trying to place my accent, I was born and partly raised in Edinburgh before immigrating with my family to Vancouver when I was younger. So bonus points for anyone who guessed that correctly. I didn't grow up dreaming of a career in finance like pretty much everybody else you've heard from today. And I'll be honest, after 19 years in the industry, I don't personally know anyone who did. So if you are considering it, you're already one step ahead. If you'd asked any of my high school maths teachers if they saw me having a career in finance, they would have laughed. Although I got A's and B's across my other subjects, I had a bit of a mental block on maths. I hated it, and it showed in my grades, which were never much higher than a C. When I was in school, I was much more interested in artistic pursuits. When I needed a new camera for my photography class, my parents lent me the money on the condition that I got a job at McDonald's. Begrudgingly, I started working there, but now looking back, I see how valuable that experience was. Working in a fast-paced environment, thinking on your feet, making quick decisions, focusing on the customer, following the rules, and striving for excellence are all things that would serve me well down the line. So I was promoted several times before leaving there as a manager. And I felt a lot of pressure to know what I should be doing with the rest of my life. And I just didn't. I'd always been pragmatic and I didn't want to waste time and money in university if it wasn't going to be applied practically in my career. And so I applied for a cashier position at a bank and I got the job. And they'd just gone through a merger with another bank and had adopted a new banking system. It wasn't going well, and so they needed people with excellent customer service skills. And if you've ever been a 16-year-old getting shouted at by an adult because their French fries were cold, by the time they got home, you likely know how to handle an unhappy customer. So during that time, I got a certificate in financial planning while taking night classes and working full-time. The company paid for that, which was great. I moved up within the branch, but the company focus was shifting. They were becoming more focused on sales, and I'm not naturally a salesperson. So I applied for a role in investment operations. Now, before I go on, some of you may have heard the statistic. It was based on an internal study at Hewlett Packard, published in the Harvard Business Review, and it found that men typically apply for jobs when they meet 60% of the required qualifications, and women only apply when they feel they meet 100%. Now, this is certainly something I've been guilty of, and this role was exactly that for me. I remember the interview, and it could not have gone better. I got the job, but after 6 months, I was bored. Lesson number one, if you only apply for jobs that you know you're already qualified for, you will put yourself on a very slow upward trajectory. In 6 months, I'd mastered the role. I was already doing the work of a senior associate, but I was earning the salary of a junior, which is another lesson. Don't continue to do work you're not being compensated for. And eventually I got promoted, but I still wasn't being challenged. Then one day I was asked to help out on a project for a couple of weeks. And really that was my transition into the world of change management and financial technology. 2 weeks turned into 3.5 years, and my role as subject matter expert evolved of a business analyst. Now, many of you might be wondering, what is a business analyst? And ultimately, it's a person who understands and documents a business problem or a need, and we help to implement a solution either through people or processes or technology in order to help the business achieve their goals. So the role is suited for people who have great attention to detail, people who are pragmatic, adaptable, like to analyze and solve problems, people who communicate well and learn quickly, and it was a perfect fit for me. I finally felt like I found my niche. It was challenging, it was exciting, there was constantly new problems to solve, and I loved it. I remember one day I was called into a senior executive's office and he asked me, why is it that I have all of these people coming into my office telling me about all the excellent work you've been doing, but you're not coming in here and telling me? So this is another lesson that I learned about being your own advocate. Until that point, I'd always expected my bosses would see the work I was doing, recognize it and reward it. And honestly, that hadn't always been the case. Your bosses are generally busy. It's unlikely they'll be aware of everything that you do day to day. We're taught not to boast, and it can seem counterintuitive, but being proud of your achievements, highlighting them to show the value you bring is an important factor in advancing your career, and being recognized for the work that you're doing. I started taking business analysis courses, again, part-time while I worked full-time. I took on more responsibility and I ended up leading a testing team, developing and leading a training program for the new banking software. It paid off, and at the end of the project, I was promoted to a permanent business analyst role. Years later, I was ready for another change and decided to move back to the UK. I've ended up in London and secured a role at Close Brothers as a business analyst. I had a great feeling when I was interviewing that it would be the right company for me, and it was. 2 years after joining, I was promoted to my current role as a business analyst practice manager. So now I manage a team of about 10 business analysts, supporting them while we deliver change and technology solutions across the organization. That may not have been the most conventional and certainly not the fastest way to get to where I am, but I am where I want to be, at least for now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Portia. And last but not least, Lisa.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Chicotto. Again, not a very British name and not one that people easily pronounce. But I'll be speaking to you about my experience in human resources and at Brooks Macdonald. So I joined Brooks Macdonald as a senior HR business partner about 2.5 years ago. And at the time, I thought, okay, well, I've got several industries on my CV. I'd like to change jobs. I thought I'd just go into the financial services industry. I would just go in for 6 months to a year, get that experience on my CV and quickly run. I don't know if it was because of the financial crisis or because of other things, but I suppose my view of the industry was quite tainted. And I justly sort of had that picture in my head. And actually, after I joined the asset management world, the investment management world, I understood quite quickly how wrong my view of the industry was, and actually what a wonderful industry it is to be a part of and how rewarding it is, which at the time I just there was just no way for me to know. I had never been part of any discussions or any information that would have opened up that sort of world to me. It was literally a question of me trying to get a tick in the box in my CV. So I joined Brooks Macdonald, and I quickly saw that it's got a very welcoming culture. Everyone is keen to help each other out. Everyone is passionate about doing the best they can by the business. But actually, the thing that did strike me was how passionate people are about doing the best by the client. And that passion for the client is something that I hadn't experienced elsewhere. I'd worked in other industries before, such as, construction, for example, and people were really proud about what they were building because you can physically see it, or pharmaceutical, and they were proud about, getting a project to the end. But that sense of duty towards the client, it's really, really unique to this industry, which makes you feel like you're really working towards something very specific, very tangible. You're changing lives here. You're helping real people meet their objectives, which was just something really rewarding there. So when I joined in the HR team, my role was to really support the front office businesses. So all the client-facing business, such as investment management, financial planning, and sales, to help them achieve the strategic aims. And my role was new, so I could really make what I could out of it. And whilst the role of a HR person is really not to go out there and win business, one of the things that is really important to a business like ours, is our people. And as we're a people business, people are key to everything that we do. So ensuring that we've got a good plan in place to attract and retain the best people is key to meeting our business objectives. So did the business have that, did that have it that clear and that articulated at the time in terms of putting people plans together? Then probably not. But they were very welcoming to hearing what I had to say, and and working together to make sure that we did the right thing by their people. So my role is to work with, from them was to work with senior leaders to do what we can with regards to making sure we had the right skills at the right time in the right place. So our discussion will focus around, the recruitment activities to make sure that all of our offices and activities are fully supported, employee engagement, to make sure that people are happy to be working with us, and if not, to look at what we can do to change things. Diversity and inclusion. Brooks Macdonald has quite an ambitious diversity goal to meet, and whilst from a senior leadership perspective we're not close to meeting that, because it was quite a challenging one, actually from just any role perspective, we've increased the number of roles filled by females considerably, from where we were before to where we're at now. So we're really proud of what we're doing, and we want to continue working in that space. And we're all, I'm also supporting them on anything else that would support the people agenda in driving just strategic aims. So after just over a year within that role, I was promoted into my current role as the head of HR business partnering and operations. And what this has meant is that whilst I continue to partner with the business in the way I did before, so having all those talent discussions and looking at where we're going as a business, I now also manage the other HR business partner who supports the back office function, so finance, risk, compliance, legal, etc. I also now set the agenda for what business partnering looks like at Brooks Macdonald, which is really exciting to have that responsibility, which I didn't have before. And something else that's new for me is that I manage projects which impact the wider business, which, you know, before any project that I would do would be very focused on my business areas and making sure, you know, we support money-making roles. So one of the examples in terms of the, you know, projects that impact the wider business is that we're currently partnering with an external provider just to sort of improve the way that we provide some of investment services. And the key to the success of that project is the people plan. And actually, you know, I've been at the heart of all the discussions from the very beginning, you know, and I bring my team as required to support the execution of that plan. And this is very exciting. It's something that I didn't think that the business would just, you know, hand that responsibility over to me, because it's quite a task. And actually, every day I'm having direct impact on the strategic direction of the business, and I'm influencing business outcomes, which is really rewarding. So as you probably noticed from a really long title, there are two parts to my title. One of them is the business partnering piece, which I've just spoken about, and then the other bit is the HR operations title. And so, you know, when you go into HR, there's so many different ways that you could go into it. So in terms of my operations part of the role, I manage an HR operations team. So these are the people that make sure that the really basic things that everybody really takes for granted happen on time, accurately, and every time. So things like, you know, processing contracts, making sure that we pay people, making sure that people's benefits are properly elected, and getting on with any project work that is going on. So, you know, we've got different parts of the team really driving the people agenda through different streams, which is great. And I suppose, you know, people assume that the role of HR is just, you know, finding people and processing contracts, but there's actually so much more to it, and it's such a rewarding role. So like many others, not only did I land in the asset management world by accident, or I suppose on purpose, but not long term on purpose, but I also landed in HR by accident about 10 years ago, right after I graduated. So at the time, I enjoyed my finance modules, and I enjoyed maths. So in my head, I was convinced that I needed to get into the financial services industry and be a stockbroker or something, which I thought, you know, would be where I could be analytical, not thinking that any other role would give me that opportunity. And actually, having gone into HR, I can see that there are things that you can do for analytical people, and those things that non-analytical people could be doing. So I've had the opportunity, both in my career generally, but actually at Brooks Macdonald, I've had the opportunity to grow every year, both from a promotion perspective, but actually from an increase in responsibilities perspective. And I haven't looked back since. And actually, I didn't leave after a year, and I think it's really rewarding to be part of this great industry where you can achieve so much, and every day you can actually see how you're impacting people's lives, whether it's directly or indirectly, but you can see that coming through. That's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you all. And I'm going to hand over to Karen, who will be kicking us off with the Q&A. Thank you, Karen.
So thank you to all the speakers. That was fantastic. And we heard so many different stories, and we want to give students the opportunity to ask questions. So what I'll say now is, students, please in the Q&A, write your questions in, and I've got one already that I'm going to kick off with, but please continue to put them in. If you'd like to direct them to a particular person, that's fine. Or if it's a general question, we'll let the speakers jump in. The first one actually was posed to the CEOs. So maybe we'll start with that one, but I think it could probably refer to all of you. And the question is asking, did you find it difficult to get into the position that you're in now? And did you face any setbacks along the way?
Okay, who wants to go first? The answer is yes. I certainly faced setbacks. And I think in life you'll always face setbacks, but the most important thing is to keep going, and to keep what I often refer to as keep pushing the door. I have a sort of mental image, a bit like the sort of Alice in Wonderland, where she's pushing different doors to see if she can get out. And sometimes you push a door and it's locked and you just won't get through that door. So you move on to the next door and you push it and it flies open. You go hurling through the door and you probably fall over and you dust yourself down and you go, oh, that probably wasn't quite the right door for you. And then there's the third door. The third door is open and you open it gently and you walk steadily through that door. And that's the door that's designed for you. So if you want to progress to get to the level of CEO, you have to keep pushing doors. And I think all our speakers today have referred to in some shape or form, pushing the door, asking the questions, saying to somebody, your line manager, maybe somebody in HR like Lisa, I want to move on to the next thing. You know, Portia saying that she wanted to be challenged. It's about not being afraid to ask the question, believing in yourself and saying, I can do this, I want to go to the next level. And you can take yourself as far as you want to go if you push the door. If you sit there, I can promise you, if you sit there and wait for people to notice how good you are, a handful will do, but a lot won't. You do actually have to make a bit of noise.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Sarah. I'd add, I've always thought that if I put barriers in front of myself, I'm only playing for somebody else, aren't I? So there are always obstacles to achieving what you want, and I shouldn't be somebody who puts them in my way. So therefore, I always presume I can do what I want to do. I have to make it happen, but I always have that positive attitude. I think it's important. The point Sarah just made is tell people what your ambition is. You would be really surprised that the more senior you get in organizations like the ones we're in, how fewer and fewer there are of people who are willing to take the responsibility of the top jobs. You may think it's a big cat fight at the top. It's not. There are fewer and fewer people who actually want it. And of course there are fewer people who are able to take it. So if you've got that ambition, you will be welcome. Just make sure you're heard. But build a reputation for being good at what you do. So dig where you stand and build a reputation for that. Portia, you were absolutely right. I've seen it in practice. I still see it in practice. Women typically, I'm sorry to be stereotypically, we typically want to be perfect before we go for something, and our male colleagues don't. And the moment you're in a position where you're a hiring manager, it is your job to educate the women around you, and don't let them do that. Do not let them to undersell themselves, and do not let them get underpaid. Tell them how to negotiate for their salaries. Sorry.
One of the challenges that I have faced, if you like, I didn't think of it as a challenge at the time, but it was a bit of a pushback. So I have 3 children, and I live in Derbyshire, and my main office is in London. And that's not been a challenge for me. I've been doing this work for the last 10 years. But I recall being asked, and I'd applied for this job, and it's quite ironic now when you think about virtual, what have we been doing for the last 8 months? I was asked, how could you possibly do your job when your children are, and you would be working in London? And I was a bit taken aback. That's definitely the culture at the time now. It's definitely the culture at the time, and thankfully it's not like that now. And my answer is something that my mother had said to me when I had my first child, and after couldn't wait to get back to work. And she said to me, you have to do what's right for you, because if you are not happy in yourself and are being true to yourself, then your family will not be happy. And that was the tale that I relayed, and said I will be wherever my clients and wherever my team need me to be. And I think you just have to stick up for who you are. and be true to yourself, and to not worry about what other people may think. And if you are then authentic, then that actually shines through. And I'm glad to say that, you know, that particularly now, as Sarah said earlier, you know, the culture within many businesses to change over the last 8 months. We have proved that we can be totally flexible and totally hardworking without actually physically go anywhere. I'd like to physically go somewhere, believe you me. I have not done a desk job for years, and this is very strange for me, but it is about having the flexibility, which Sarah said earlier, and that works for everybody, male and female. So we're in a different place now, but just be true to yourself and be authentic.
Thank you for the answers. We have a lot of good questions, so we'll do our best to get through them. Some of them may overlap with some of the things you've already said, but I think the young people are really interested in applying because they're at the early stage of their career. Any advice for going through that early application process of sort of how you get yourself in the door even?
I can give a bit of advice on that. So first of all, make sure that you use the right name of the company before you hit the button send, you know, because that's very awkward. But, you know, this thing happens. I didn't come back to them. I thought, you know what, let's forget it. Not going to work at Barclays. But I think that it's very difficult. And I remember when I was applying for the jobs and they asked me, have you had any work experience or internships? And I haven't really. And the reason for that, because I was working, I have to pay for my rent and I have to pay for my food, and I did not have any time to do that. However, now looking back and working with a lot of students, I actually thought through and I have like some advice that I can share with you what you could do. So if you are interested of working in finance, start gathering your information. So put a plan in place. For instance, Thursday morning, you will listen one of the podcasts from Financial Times. There is one called Young Money, and irrespective whether you are thinking of having a career in finance or not, this is a great podcast just to bring your awareness about investing. That's something that you will do it yourself at some point in the future. So that's one thing. Secondly, you know, watch on LinkedIn, go and find the people that you find inspiring in financial services. Go and find Liz Field and follow her, you know, and read what she posts and really comment it. And don't say just great job. Say, Liz is going to be now activity, going to be crazy at your LinkedIn profile. But say like, oh, this is, and then when you find people that you find interesting, find them that, you know, perhaps they're based closer where you are. So, you know, you don't offer someone to go for coffee when they're like in Scotland and you're based in Birmingham, for example. And, you know, drop in a message, ask for advice. And for instance, you can say that, oh, I find you very inspiring. Maybe we can chat. You can have a bit of a correspondence and ask, would you mind if I message you 6 months later? 100% people will say yes. Most of them would, nobody message again. Put a calendar reminder in your and message them 6 months later. Ask them if there is any opportunities coming along, and be always in their back of their mind, and you will get that in the career. So that would be a couple of advices from my end.
Thanks. I'm sure there's many other things people can say about that, but that's a really useful series of things to start with. There are several questions that are gender related, and I'm just going to kind of combine them together because I think there's a sort of theme to this. And the questions are around, have you been treated differently in your industry because you're a woman? Is there still a pay gap? And have you felt intimidated by your, I'm assuming they mean male colleagues, by colleagues in general in your industry? You're on
Definitely
mute.
Sorry, there's definitely a difference. I would actually say, interestingly enough, I find that there is much less of a difference in the UK market. Australia was a much more masculine market and a lot more intimidating. Many of the times you do feel, I suppose, a little bit intimidated in a meeting. It might be also about your own confidence levels. I know when I would be sitting in meetings with, 10 senior people and you are the only woman, I questioned myself, and I had to catch myself on doing that. But that's why we have these kind of forums, because we need to champion each other. And as you said, you know, if you have the abilities, then there shouldn't be any barriers. There is a pay gap, of course, but I think also we need to keep arguing that, and also the gender inequality reporting that the firms are now required to do helps expose that a little bit. It's always a bit awkward if you're the only person in the team and they say there's a 20% gap. So
I will also add that once I was promoted as a wealth manager, I've got given a book of clients. And one of them said, why did I got, you know, young female? And he thought that I didn't hear that, but I did. But the thing is, well, the reason why he got younger female and not a very senior executive, because he had less assets under management, and that's life, you know? So, but what I did, I killed him with kindness. I was like really effective. I was every time on point of his questions. I proved my expertise. And then later on, when I left my company, he followed me after, and he was saying how much he appreciated the help and support I was giving him throughout this period of time. So you can't win them all, but some of them you do.
Thanks. We've got a question about, are there any of your responsibilities in your job that you enjoy less? That's part of the question. I know that's a hard one. And let me just see, the rest of that question was about how much is maths important in your jobs?
I'll take part of this. So I think they don't call it work for nothing. There's always going to be something that you might dislike doing more than other parts of your job. I think, I mean, that might be various things, or it could just be certain meetings or kind of moments in time that aren't great. But I think generally speaking, you should be happy in what you're doing, get fulfillment out of the role that you're in, because I think generally if you're more unhappy than you are happy, you're probably in the wrong role for you, or potentially the wrong company. So it might be time to make a move. And sorry, I forgot the second part of that.
How much is maths used in your job?
A decent amount, but you know what? Nothing that you can't get by without a calculator, luckily, at least for me. So yeah, there's definitely a mathematical element to it, but again, technology is there to support you. So there's nothing that a calculator, an Excel spreadsheet can't help you with.
Tracy, were you going to say something?
I suppose I had an observation on this one and the one before. I find that I tackle my demons, the things I don't like about the jobs as I came up into this one, were typically things I had to do. So I had to find a way of being good at the things I didn't like, just simply to get the job done. And weirdly, that is so satisfying. When you actually start to tackle the things you don't like so much or aren't very good at, it becomes really satisfying. And then it's no longer something you don't like. So your point about whatever it is, I can't even remember now which it was. But the question before, you mentioned about, do you ever feel intimidated at work? And I just wanted to not miss the opportunity to say that's just not acceptable anymore. Liz and Sarah and I alluded to culture before. Back in the dark ages when we three started, there kind of wasn't a forum for us to talk about things like this, and therefore we'd need to find it our own strength to deal with things. But now we are building companies that have the structures that won't allow you to be in an environment where in any way you're intimidated or feel that you're being put in a place that you can't cope with or put up with. You have whistleblowing helplines, you have HR partners who you can talk to, like Lisa, who can help you manage it. And only by people putting their foot down and saying, no, this isn't acceptable, will we actually get the places that we want to work in. So in case the question came from that kind of direction, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to make the point.
Fantastic. A different question is, how did you know which part of the financial services sector that you wanted to go into?
I mean, I'm happy to talk this one. I guess for me, it was a little bit different because I almost picked my role and knew the area I wanted to be in before I moved into financial services. But I guess something I found really helpful in guiding the specific role I was looking for was making use of a graduate scheme. So I wasn't sure when I first started in my initial role before I moved into financial services exactly what I wanted to do. But a graduate scheme is a really great way to get exposure to all areas of the business. And then you start to surprise yourself in the areas that you actually do love and enjoy, and the areas you may possibly don't enjoy as much. And I think that for me was really beneficial. But as I said, I kind of picked the role before I moved into financial services.
Great, thanks. We've got a question, and I love this question. We often get this kind of question, that if you were your own teenage self, if you were looking back on your own teenage self, and these are all teenagers now asking this question, what would you have, I guess, done differently or advised yourself to do to go into this sector?
Again, I'm happy to take this one. For me, I would say that I was probably, and quite embarrassing having to say this, had the preconceived idea that finance was boring, the industry was a bit archaic, and it was all for men. So all the myths that I've told you aren't there. That's what I believed it to be when I was younger. So I guess for me, it would be never to close my mind to anything before I've experienced it and really understand how it can help and how you can actually really have a great time in a role there. So that would be the main point for me, to looking back at myself, don't shut ideas away and actually go and research things a little bit more before I decide they're not for me.
Okay, we don't have too much longer, but I really would like to address this one. And this is one that I don't think any of us could help but notice. And this is from an anonymous student. It says, I couldn't help but notice there's a lack of women of color during the webinar. So it's quite hard to accept and apply advice from people who don't know how to navigate the lives of women of color who want to be CEOs. And I think it's a fair point. I'm just wondering how you guys want to take that one.
I'm happy to say a few words about this. You're absolutely right. There is not colour who is on the panel today. That doesn't mean that there aren't any women of colour who actually work in our industry. This is a pilot, so we had 4 firms that we wanted to work with initially. I didn't specify that I wanted a diverse group of a diverse looking group of women, i.e. have you got anybody, a woman of colour to join this panel? My specification was I wanted women who were aged 30 and under. As far as Tracy and Sarah and I, we do not have any colour who are CEOs in our industry. I can probably count on less than, nearly just over one hand and the female CEOs there are in our industry. We are we absolutely are on a journey. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing the seminar. But we do have another 2 seminars. I'm very happy to try and find other firms or even the firms that are involved here and specify want to have a woman of colour on the panel. That is a fair point. But we are trying to be diverse and we're trying to be inclusive, and we are on a journey. So bear with us, please.
Could I add to that, Liz? First of all, I can give you some names. I've got some great contacts I can offer who might be able to help you on the panel. I'm sure they'd be willing to. But whoever wrote the note there, I can speak, I know, for Sarah and Liz and others in our groups. When we work together, we actively seek out input from people who have different experiences than ourselves. So I have one of my friends who I'll recommend to Liz, maybe on a panel. I talk to her regularly. She is my kind of BAME coach, and I'm her not BAME coach, and we talk to each other about our experiences so that I can help to anticipate some of the things that we need to think about in our organisation to be a place where everybody can be themselves, everybody can feel completely welcomed and valued irrespective of background and how they joined us. So thank you for your question, very good.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, can I just add another point to that? Is that so I'm obviously not a woman of color, but I have experienced discrimination to some level in my experience, and I appreciate it's not the same. But you know, when I came to the UK, I didn't speak English. I was put into a school where everybody did speak English, and it was quite a diverse school, but everybody. I think I was one of maybe a handful of people who were foreign in that we were foreign from a non-English speaking country point of view. And that was difficult because, you know, for me to pass an English exam when I didn't speak English, it was quite tough. I suppose what I would suggest is, and I'm not, you know, that wasn't what the question was, but I would suggest is, you know, not to let other people's views or I suppose discriminations, or whether they're said out loud or not, stop you from achieving what you can achieve. I'd say, you know, push forward, because I've had to work really hard in, you know, initially I had an accent, and then, you know, I didn't have that accent anymore, and my grades were really poor to begin with because I didn't speak English in order for me to pass my exams. And, you know, but actually if you push hard and, you know, you knock those doors down, I hope that with the way that things are going, all these initiatives, that everybody has the opportunity to get far in life.
Thank you, everyone.
And something quickly, Karen.
Yeah.
Just to echo what Liz said, because when we started speaking about this event, that's exactly one of the reasons why this event has been put together, and why, you know, us brokers working with PAME4 to really you know, diversify the sector. And I know for a fact from speaking with Liz that there is a genuine drive to really, you know, diversify the sector, and it's not just an exercise or it's not just an event to look good or to as a tick box. It definitely drives this part of the beginning of a long-term plan to really, you know, change things internally. And I know that part of the aspiration, again, as just mentioned in the email that went out to students, about that there's a long-term aspiration to actually have more women in leadership position within the sector. So I just wanted to echo that. Hence why we, as an organization, we, you know, hope that the students would know that we are quite serious when it comes to working with organizations to not, you know, to diversify the sector, make sure they're creating a space where young people feel they can be themselves, in respect of your background, color, as Katrina mentioned at the beginning, your potential alone being what becomes a determining factor.
We've got time for one more, I think. And the question is about skills. What do you think are the most important skills in your sector? And somebody asked particularly about interviewing skills. So maybe if we just go around and let each person say maybe one or two things, and then we'll wrap it up. How about, I'll start with you, Rebecca.
I was going to say clarity, but I feel quite confused in saying that right now. But yes, I would definitely make sure you have a clear story that you want to tell about the role that you're going for.
Sandra.
I would say, as an advisor, trustworthy is the most important thing. And secondly is being reliable. So at any job, whatever you do, take an ownership and take pride of that job, and make sure you follow it through from the beginning to the end. And this will take you far.
Tracy?
Apologies. Trustworthy. So a very similar theme. In financial services, it's not just your company that people trust, it's yourself. So you need to demonstrate that.
Gemma?
Yeah, I would say teamwork and willingness to work with others and support others is particularly important in my role, but in any role that you're looking for. It's never typically a one-man team. So yeah.
Portia, do you want to address quickly interviewing? That would be great.
Yeah, so I think interviewing, definitely things like honesty and integrity is really key. If you are asked a question and you don't know the answer, it's okay to say that you don't know, and much more preferable to hear as an interviewer, because they'll be able to tell if you're lying. And yeah, I think echoing the comments that other people have made already, things like being trustworthy, you know, acting with integrity, obviously key if you're going to work in financial services. Things like communication skills and just some general skills, eagerness to learn. You know, especially if you're going in an entry-level position, chances are that you don't know everything. It's good to admit that, but obviously having that eagerness to learn, and wanting to absorb that knowledge and learn from other experts in the industry will definitely serve you well.
Sarah?
I obviously endorse everything everybody's said, but one of the key skills is listening and to listen. It's really, really, really important. People don't listen. They don't listen to the question. They don't listen to what's being asked of them, whether you're looking after a client and you must listen to everything that they say, whether you're talking to a line manager, whether you're carrying out somebody's appraisal, whatever role you're taking, whether it's very senior or really when you're right from the start, make sure you listen.
Lisa?
So I would say be yourself, because you don't want to sort of portray this person that you're not and then get the job and you can't keep it up. So it will be difficult to keep it up for long if you're not yourself. So bring your true self to the interview, and also show your passion and your drive to do your best. So to the point that everybody else has made, don't try to lie to get through it. Be honest, but show that you're hungry and you want to learn and you want to make an impact. So that goes a long way. When you're really junior, nobody's expecting you to be an expert in everything. There's an understanding that you come in and you probably have limited experience, and that's okay, because companies can give you the skills that you need, but actually that willingness to go the extra mile that that comes from you. You need to offer it to a new role.
Liz, I'm going to let you have the last word and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I was going to say, similar about being sick, but I think specifically in terms of interviews, a fair number now are competency based. So be very clear about, if you've not worked, no work experience, that doesn't matter. What are your skill sets? And how can you apply your experience to the competencies that they are trying to tease out? More often than not, they'll tell you what those competencies are. We've got some information that we're going to send out via the brokerage afterwards, which talks about what are the skills and competencies that we look for, and just think a little bit more broadly. Don't go into a blind panic that, oh, I've not done that, I've not done that. To what we've been talking about earlier, you'd not be expected to do 100%. Just think more broadly about where your experience lies, where your skills lie, and how that can apply to the competencies that are wanted in the role that you're applying for.
Excellent. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed that Q&A session and a lot of thoughts and insights there. I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers for sharing your journey and advice to our students. And we are now going to continue this by going to sign into the post event virtual networking link. So just to continue the conversation, continue the Q&As. And also that would be easy for the students to also turn in the camera to actually put faces to some of the people who've been asking questions as well. I'll say massive thanks to all of our speakers again. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to another one in the near future.
Thank you, Oris.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed, Oris.
Thank
And
you very
also
much.
thank you to all of our, also thank you to all our students as well.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions.
Good luck
Thanks,
to you all.
Bye.
Thank you.